Hello everyone, I'm someone of little relevance, and Slay the Spire 2 came out for early access recently. Well, at least at the time when I started recording this video, which, let's check. It's been 2 months? But, what do you... well, whatever. Disregarding the absolute overwhelming dread I feel for how long this project has taken me, I wanted to create some figures for some of the new characters, beginning with the Regent. We'll begin with this body of wire and epoxy putty that I definitely didn't forget to record, and begin smothering it with clay. And as past me continues to cover the figure in clay, I wanted to clarify something real quick. I am not what they call good at sculpting or whatever. I'm mediocre at best and absolutely awful on average. So if you were expecting high quality, like top shelf material, you've come to the wrong place. And even with that being said, I do plan to get better at it. And also, this is my first YouTube video. Sorry for bad lighting, blurry footage, or, anything else. Whether you stay to the end, have already left, or just about to click on something else, thank you for stopping by. Once the figure has been thoroughly covered in clay, we'll cut off another chunk and... Why am I going farewell? We'll squish and squash the clay into a little cube, which will act as the, does the bottomless sea have a name? You know what, that's the dumbest question. Isn't it just called the seat? No, actually, whatever. We'll slap a circle into the side of the cube, and give him some arms so he can hold up the throne. Then on the other side, give him a twin brother doing the exact same. After blending them into the sides to ensure these guys aren't going to fall off the cube, cut off small pieces of wire and bend them into little legs. With the legs attached, I can start carving some details into their bodies and arms, baking them once I'm done, so that my fat-ass clumsy fingers don't ruin them while accidentally building the rest of the figure. Not that they necessarily look good regardless, but moving on. Smooshing another blob of clay and tearing out its innards, this will be the backrest of the throne, a term I just learned because my dumbass genuinely looked up what the bottom part of the seat was called. It's wild, did you know it's called a seat? With the backrest finished, we'll slap on 2 armrests and... Hate! Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. Realizing that the chair doesn't just drop straight down, it actually has a curve to it, I'm gonna half-ass it, and now that the chair is fully built, I can start giving it some scratches to build up some detail. I'll also realize that the top of the chair needs to be a little more pointy. Swapping over to the Regent, I'll build up his body a bit and stick a piece of wire through that'll act as his arms, and I'll bend it into a cocky pose, fitting for his royalty. With the arms sculpted and well posed, I'll squish a small blob of clay into a rhombus and cut a cross onto the front, adding a little dot to the middle as an eye. However, before I slap it onto the torso, I add these little pyramid shoulder pads and attempt to add wrinkles into the clothing, which I succeed in doing and don't hate at all. Oh, I also add folds to the back, but yeah, I'm not very good at this. And now that the torso looks, I'll finally slap on the head and press him into a seat, pushing him real far back so nobody realizes that I completely forgot to add the collar of a shirt. Then we'll move on to I'm playing on the Tamagotchi. I have hours of footage of me playing on the Tamagotchi, by the way. And I wonder why this project took me so long. Moving on. I'll attach a small blobber to the nubs of the arms, cutting off the tip, and begin adding little fingers. And totally not get distracted by another 30 minutes of the goddamn Tamagotchi. And with the hands done, we are finally done with the Regent. And upon baking him, his arm fell off. Fantastic. Nothing a little super glue can't fix, though. And with that done, We are actually fully finished sculpting him. We are not quite finished yet, though, as I didn't just want to make the Regent, I also wanted to make a boss, specifically the Lagavulin Matriarch. This dude. Wait, no, I know what you're gonna say. I didn't pick this. No, I didn't pick this because it was the easiest looking boss to make. Promise, I promise. I loaded up a game and it was the boss that was selected for me. Trust me. I didn't do it. I didn't pick it because it's easy. I promise, I promise, I promise. And now that you fully believe me, I'll start crushing up some aluminum into a ball. Into an egg-shaped ball. Ball. An egg. Yippee skippy. Oh, that was such a bad take. Yeah, I'm keeping it in. And once the aluminum ball is to a decent size, we'll pull out the motherfucking rolling pin. Woo! We'll use the rolling pin to flatten out the clay, building up the body and finally deciding to make the lighting better. Yeah, I originally didn't want to have this light on because it makes my hand, the clay I use makes my hands really glittery, and that made me pretty insecure. But I should have had this on the entire time because I can actually see what I'm doing and it looks way better for the video. Yeah, I don't know why I'm ranting about this. I'm fairly certain you guys don't really care. With the egg looking smoothly bumpy, a look I totally intended, I'll blend in a blobber of clay to the side, shaping, smoothing, and adding an indent in between it and the body before giving it a lump of its own. I'll then carve out a mouthful so he can finally throw his voice into the nothingness that surrounds him, followed by carving out an eye so he can comprehend the nothingness that surrounds him. The hellish nightmare of being unable to move, conscious nevertheless, yet destined to be nothing more than a simple decoration on a shelf. I'll then jam a metal rod down his throat, adding 2 clay cylinders to said rod and sculpting a praying mantis-like claw on the end. I'll then make a second copy and jam both of them down his gaping maw, only to realize that I made them maybe a bit too big and I'm gonna have to rebuild them. Smaller this time. After I've built and placed the smaller arms, I'll cut up a bit more armature wire and build smaller mandibles that will be placed right under the bigger ones. And once the mandibles have been attached, it is time for the incessant task that is bulbous building. You know, part of me wanted to make you just sit through like 30 solid minutes of the almost 3 hours I had to sift through of bulbous building. But all you really need to know is that I kind of just added these little indents onto the side that will be little pockets for the legs to fit into later. And with the insanely punishing, back-breaking, arduous task that was bulbous building done, I can move on to making some details. You know, at the time I started sculpting this, I actually didn't know that this boss had the elites from the first Slay the Spire on its back. Because one, I can't read names apparently. Like, I feel like you know, they share the same name. And two, I suck major ass at video games and died to it almost immediately on my first attempt. I'm also just not very smart. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I'm just kind of fucking dumb. But something about the little bulbuses on its back made me want to etch in the little faces that were on the I can't say that goddamn name! The faces of the elites from Slay the Spire 1. With the face of the bastard whose goddamn names I can't pronounce done, I'll cut up even more armature wire that I'll stick into the little pockets I left earlier, shaping them into little legs. With that is the Lagavulin Matriarch done. Somewhere in between finishing the Matriarch and painting the Regent, I ended up dropping him this little tiny distance and he broke off his finger. I attempt fixing it, but it comes off again when painting, so it doesn't really matter. The main reason I put this little bit of footage in was because of the little hammer I have in the back. Yeah, originally he was going to have a hammer from one of his cards called the Heirloom Hammer, but I ended up making the hammer a little too small than what's shown in the card, and at this point I didn't want to restart and scrap everything, so I just scrapped the hammer. Just kind of wanted to say that. Anyways, on to painting time! Woo! Finally, all those crappy amateur sculptures will be covered in a beautiful layer of paint that'll make them look so professional. Oh wait. Yeah, again, I am not a good painter either. You know, it makes you wonder why he even chose to do this in the first place. But regardless, I completely forgot to record myself priming the Regent. How wonderful. Don't want to dwell on that too much, however, so I start painting the face, shoulder pads, hands, as well as the minions on the bottom with a layer of this orangey brown color. I'll then give the shirts and sleeves a nice dark blue. I'll switch over to an acrylic for the pants, which look... well, they look much worse, but I promise they won't look that bad. Look, I can't promise perfection. Hell, I can't even promise mediocre, but they won't look this god-awful. Switching back to the head, I'll paint the eye in the middle yellow before trying some source lighting on the areas around it. Decide the crevices would look better if painted black. Then add a brown around the head, trying to add shading. And this part is easily the worst part of this painting. I 100% must have half-assed this part because it looks so goddamn awful. Like, I'm sorry, I want to rant about this for a bit. In certain lightings, it looks amazing. It looks well shaded and perfect. But in the video, when the bright light is shining at it, it looks like a first grader painted this. Like, it looks better in dark lighting, I promise. Anyways, onto the chair. I use a mix of light grays, dark grays, and whites, blending them together to try and get a natural looking concrete color. To get a bit more source lighting in there, I'll dry brush a yellow on the edges of the chair. Although I don't think, with how the light is angled, I don't think it would be hitting this, but yeah, well. I'll then paint the chain that connects the shoulder pads gold, and dry brush some lighter blues over his shirt to add some highlights. Then use a brown wash to get any hard to reach crevices, and touch up his feet with some gold. A quick fix of any noticeable whites or overlapping paints, and that should be the Regent done and painted. Not my best work, I'll admit. And once again, yeah, his fingers fell off again. Whatever. So, another quick rant before we move on to painting the Monarch. Yeah, I forgot to record me priming it again. However, I found myself priming the hammer. Yeah, that's real great. That's real useful, maybe. Yeah. To the Monarch, I'll paint his full body with an egg white paint, touch his eyes with some black paint, and oh god, I've already ruined it. And so we've entered that trust the process stage of the art. Yeah, there's no process here. This is just trust. I'm just adding paint and hoping it looks good. Yeah, I don't know why I chose to do this. Continuing to touch up the crevices with grays and blues. I'll also add some white highlights and even more paint, and hope that it'll make this at least somewhat salvageable. Completely screwing that up, however, I'll just decide to paint the little veins that I completely forgot to mention adding when building this figure. Yay. I'll then start painting the limbs with the darker orange, but decide I hate that color, and mix up a little lighter orange that looks much better. I'll then start painting the only part of this figure I think looks passable, and give the crab thingy a blue pupil. Hey, you know that gray paint that from far away and in certain lightings looks kinda decent? Well, behold the bottle of bad decisions! Yeah, so I tried using a wash to make it look better and, well, made it look 1,000 times worse. However, this was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because when I repainted it, I used the blue that I mainly only use on like the bottom part of the crab, and I decided that it looked way better than the gray did, and so I repainted it. Now again, I said better, not good. Don't get those confused. And with all the gray repainted to blue, a few touch-ups on the claws and feet, and that is Lagavulin Monarch done and painted. Now, so far, you've seen me make things at a below average skill level. I've carved and made stuff out of clay, as well as painted minis and the stuff I've made out of clay, multiple times before. In this next section, I'm going to make something I've only done once before. A base. Specifically for the I still can't see that goddamn name. You get the point. I'm going to start off by cutting 4 inches off this foam that I didn't realize was extremely soft when I ordered it off Amazon, and is going to make this a real pain in the ass. I'll then cut off the same 4 inches out of this easier to carve blue foam. I am going for the bridge that's seen during the boss fight itself, but I'm going to take a bit of creative liberty on the very bottom of the base that you'll see later. I was originally going to cut a plank every half an inch, but I didn't realize that there was this extra 1/4 inch added to the end of the ruler. You know, while normally I would call myself a dumbass for not noticing this, but honestly, why are rulers built like this? In fairness though, I'm kind of glad I didn't notice this, because half an inch planks would have been such a pain in the ass to make, and it would also just look really ugly. So, hey, congrats on me being a dumbass. With the foam marked, I'll start cutting out the planks, contemplating my decision to keep using it, and decide, whatever, may as well, and begin adding grooves into the surface to give it that woody texture, and using a ball stylus to try and smooth out the edges. I'll then cut and texture 10 more planks, then cut the edges off some for a bit of variation, and decide to cut the base in half so that I can reuse it for the Regent. I do not end up doing this. I'll mark out sections for the planks can stand so I don't just flatten out the entire area, and then I'll start carving, where you can finally see how I truly have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Once the area is a fair bit lower than the wooden poles sticking out, I use some ball stylus to smoothen out some of the rougher edges. Also carve the bottom edges, which feel very unnecessary, but oh well. And say screw ball stylus and pull out Mr. Johnson himself. Then glue all the planks together into one big piece, and it is time to paint. And oh my god, I finally have footage of me priming it! I will just shut up and let you enjoy this. How riveting! Awe-inspiring even! Anyways, I'll paint the base yellow, mixing in whites and some browns in hopes of getting a nice sandy looking color. I'll then mix with glue that I'll use to paint the wood nubs and eventually the planks, then using super glue to bring both pieces together. And the final step of slapping down the Lagavulin, that is everything painted and done. Hey there, to anyone who has made it to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching the full thing. I know I'm not the best at, clay or painting or anything, but I do hope I was able to provide at least a bit of entertainment, even if it was mostly cringe. Hey, entertainment's entertainment, I don't care. But hey, if you did enjoy this video, I have more stuff in the works. The next thing I'm creating should be an original creation. It's not from a game or movie or anything. So hey, if you're interested in that. Otherwise, I do genuinely hope you enjoyed this video. And go have a good day. If you want. I don't know, you can have a bad day if you want to. Up to you.